يقدمها whurley المؤسس والرئيس التنفيذي لشركة Strangeworks. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. An interactive session titled Citizen Scientists: From Playgrounds to Particle Physics by whurley, founder and chief executive officer of Strangeworks, is going to start now here at level 7.
Good morning. Today, I want to share with you a vision for the future. A vision for the future of scientific development, of scientific advancement, of the way that we address the problems in our world. But before I do that, I thought I'd set the stage with how did I get to this point? How did I come to the conclusion that I'm going to pitch you on, which most of you will perhaps think is far beyond our reach, that I believe is much, much closer than you could possibly imagine. And how I got there is I have 2 new young children, ages 7 and 6. Now I have an older child, 27, but when I had that child, I was very focused on my career. I was trying to make a name for myself. I didn't really think about a lot of the bigger problems of the world. And when I had these 2 young children, it occurred to me that they're going to grow up in a world of inheriting a bunch of our problems. Societal problems, political problems, environment problems, disease, etc. And so, to set the tone, I believe that humanity is in more crisis than it realizes. I think that there is an inertial effect to crisis, much like there is in economic movements or other things where actions we've taken many years ago won't show up or be on our radar for another few years. Maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 20. So one of the problems I thought about was during COVID was pandemics. Pandemics are a huge, huge thing. 38% chance that we'll have another COVID-19-like pandemic. So you look at that and you say, what's the effect on the economy? $8.2 trillion in loss because of that. This is a big problem. This is a huge thing, not just for people, not just because of the loss of life, but because of the effects on the economy, which linger for years and years after. There's a 3 times chance that we'll have in the next decade increasing number of pandemics. And so I thought about that, and then I thought about the climate. Everybody is worried about climate. COP is happening here. This is obviously a concern because 75% of our land environment and 66% of our marine environment has been affected by us, by humans. 50% of the CO2, we've had a 50% CO2 increase since the industrial age. Now, you get into with a point on, whoops, there we go. This is putting 1 million species at risk of disappearing. Obviously an effect. You know, in the museum here, on my visit, I did an interview where they had the DNA collection of so many species that people could come and play with. I thought it was an amazing exhibit because I don't think people understand the effects of losing even something small in the Amazon or somewhere else on the planet long term. And this affects all of us. This affects all of our children. Then I thought about energy. And I thought, you know, we've had a 50% increase in the world's energy consumption by 2040. This is natural. We're advancing as a species. We're doing more things. You think this is an energy increase? Wait till we go beyond the stars. Wait till we start trying to colonize other planets and move to be a multiplanetary species. It'll take huge amounts of energy, huge amounts of resources. In 2022, we used 604 exajoules of energy, right? This is a 1.1% comparison to 2021, but it doesn't take into account that our population is going to soar, and as the population is soaring, as we develop things like, you know, the continent of Africa and other things, and more places become more industrialized or more active in the economy, we're going to have more people, and we're going to use more energy. 33.6 gigatons of CO2 emissions. This is excellent. I think people are working on solving this by doing carbon capture. I don't know that that's the solution, and I'll get to that a little later in the presentation. And after energy, I thought about food. Food is something we don't think about, but every time I go to eat in America, I get a plate that's big enough to feed a family of 4, right? It's why I have this belly now. And it disturbs me that, 34% was a 34% decrease in agricultural production in Africa of food, a continent on the rise that we should all be looking at and investing in. There was a third of the food produced last year wasted. So how can we sit here and complain about people starving when we're wasting a third of the food that we produce, right? It doesn't make any sense to me. And 24% of those greenhouse gases we talked about come from agriculture and agricultural production. So there's so much opportunity in preparing for pandemics, in looking at the environment, in looking at the way we produce energy, and in food. But that led me to disease. Disease shapes the human condition. There's 1 in 6 deaths caused by cancer, something almost everyone has been affected by or knows someone that's been affected by, but we still don't have solutions for. What is our solution for cancer? We maybe give you a pill, we operate on you, we mutilate people, and then we radiate them. This doesn't seem like the right solution to this problem, but we don't understand what the solutions are. 15 million deaths a year is what that leads to from disease. And $1 trillion in healthcare spending in 2024 to help mitigate the results of the pandemic. So healthcare, another area that we really need to think about, we really need to focus on. And this leads me to my hypothesis. What is the root cause of us not being able to solve all of these problems? What is the one thing we could do? And as I thought about this, I started thinking about how I got to where I'm at in my career. I didn't take a traditional path. I'm a high school graduate. I never went to college. And now I work in quantum computing. That all makes perfect sense to me. But I thought, what is the root cause? And the root cause is simple. There's a lack of scientists. A huge lack of scientists in the world. There are simply not enough. There are 8.1 billion people on the planet, projected to be 9.7 billion by 2050, and 100 billion by 2100. And at our current pace, do you know how many people on the planet would be scientists? 0.1%. That means right now, there's 1 scientist for every 1,000 humans on Earth. But all 1,000 of those humans are affected by these problems we're talking about. And 999 of them are not working on the solution. So, we need more scientists. It's obvious. It's not something that's a nice to have, it's a need to have. It is critical to the future of our species. And to put that into perspective, because I look at the audience, I see you thinking about that 1 in 1,000, what does that look like? I thought I'd come up with a graphic that would really put it into perspective, and that's this. If you were to take those numbers, it'd be the equivalent of placing your house key on a football pitch. That's how many scientists there are in the world. Right now, today. So, unlimited problem space, very limited technical talent to address this. In quantum computing, as an example, there are probably only 200 or 300 people in the world that matter. When I started my company 5 years ago, there were only 4 university programs worldwide for quantum information science. Thankfully, now there's 40, but it's going to take years for those students to come out and have that knowledge and that education to solve those problems. Our system on creating scientists is broken. But I have a solution. How will we create more scientists? How will we take it from 0.1% to 50%, or 60%, or 100%? Can you imagine a world where everyone was a scientist, where everyone could be a part of the scientific process, everyone could affect the world around them in a positive way? And I believe that'll happen due to what I call the convergence. Right now, we've heard many talks here from many futurists about many advanced topics. AI is one obviously trending, obviously everyone is paying attention to. Artificial intelligence will not happen without a quantum computing substrate. If you think about it logically, nature is quantum mechanical. Our brains are from nature and quantum mechanical. And if we want to build an artificial intelligence, we will have to do it using quantum mechanics. And so that's not to say that the work going on today isn't great. It's not to say, oh, they can't do that without me. It's to say that we're looking at these two technologies, quantum computing and artificial intelligence, as if they're completely different things, when in fact they are the same thing. They are symbiotic. They are necessary for the future. And I'll tell you the things you should consider. Now, just to show of hands, how many people are familiar with quantum computing at all? That is shocking. I don't believe about 30, 40% of you, but I'm just kidding. So quantum computing, for those of you who don't know, is a new form of computing. It's our first step away from von Neumann architectures. What that means is that everything from your cell phone to the most advanced supercomputer in the world works on a single architecture we created in the 30s, okay? And these computers are incapable of solving what we call intractable problems. So what's an intractable problem? One that's often used as the traveling salesperson. So we all want to travel to 14 cities around the world, and I have Apple's newest, greatest laptop, and I write a program to figure out the best route for us, and that computer takes a few thousand seconds to get to that answer, okay? But then perhaps we decide 22 cities is better, an increase of only 8. That same laptop would take more than 5,000 years to get to that solution. If we went to 28, it would take longer than the time of the known universe. These are what you call intractable problems. These are problems that you find in all of the areas I highlighted, in energy, in healthcare, in everything, even in finance. And so quantum computers use nature to program on. You take something like a salt atom, you blow it up, you pull an electron off, you suspend it with lasers in an ion trap, or you cool it down as cool as space, almost 0 Kelvin, in a superconducting system. And when those particles stop moving, we can use them, much like a football, to straight up as a 1, straight down as a 0. We can orient them in any way. So why is this so powerful? Well, it's so powerful because on a classic computer, if we have 4 bits, we have 16 outcomes, and we can only be in one of those outcomes at the same time. But if we have 4 qubits, 4 quantum bits, we still have 16 outcomes, but we can be in all 16 positions at once, giving us infinite scale of compute power. And it gets better than that, because not only can we do that, but if we have 4 bits and we add a 5th bit, we have 25 outcomes. But if we have 4 qubits and we add a 5th qubit, we have 2 to the n the number of bits. So these things scale exponentially. They're not going to make the cat videos on YouTube faster. They are probably our best chance to cure cancer and address the problems we have with the planet. So that leads us to artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is something that's hotly debated. The ethics of it, all of the things. But the thing I'll tell you is that what we have right now is more like a really, really smart parrot, right? It's not quite what it's being billed as. I see all the fear. Sam Altman had the drama last week where he was, worked there, then he didn't work there, then he worked at Microsoft, now he works there, maybe at Microsoft, maybe somewhere else. It was very confusing. But I wasted my entire weekend following that. But one of the things that came out of that was a rumor of a thing called Q, this AI that somehow magically had developed itself within OpenAI that they were so scared to let out to the world. Look, I can promise you, no killer robots anytime soon, okay? As a software engineer, these things trick your perception into thinking they're much smarter than they are. When you get an answer from ChatGPT and it's not the right answer, it's because you don't know how to use it. It's not an AI. You can't just ask it anything. You have to have context. Imagine that I have a giant database of all the world's information, and then I just say, here's a random question, no context. Of course I get the wrong answer. So artificial intelligence is key, and we're probably going to see AGI very soon. I would say for sure in the next 10 years, possibly before 2030. An artificial general intelligence, that would be what all of you perceive now to be AI. That would be revolutionary for our species and would lead to the development of a superintelligence at some point in the future. So these two technologies are going to combine. You can't have quantum without having an artificial intelligence research help us explore the quantum landscape. There are dozens of problems we haven't addressed, from decoherence times to noise, on and on. And artificial intelligence is already building algorithms that don't run on classical infrastructure. So we need a new form of compute. And as I said, these two things are symbiotic. They are one and the same. So what does this lead to? This leads to what I am dedicating my entire life to, what I've spent the last 6 years working on and will spend the rest of my days working on, which is changing everything. And everything is about to change in a massive way that people can't imagine. Large language models are awesome. They contain all of this data. We have all of these debates of copyright. Japan recently said if something is taken into a large language model, it's not a copyright violation. If you use AI to create something, you can copyright it. I think it's the best regulatory framework for this age. But we worry about them, but think about what large language models do. They give access to every bit of data in the world to everyone, okay? They give you this as this gift, but you can't really perfect it because you don't have a way of turning that data into an application. And that's where co-pilots come in. Co-pilots, GitHub recently did their universe presentation. They said, we're going to refound the company, founded on Git the first time, now we're going to refound it on co-pilots. So co-pilots help you develop code. They can answer questions about your code, they can inspect your code. My son is 7 years old, now talks to ChatGTP to talk to a co-pilot to build code for a game that he's building. My son does not know how to code, he doesn't know how to do art. He can take a drawing that he makes, which is, as I tell him, wonderful. It's a beautiful drawing. And he can take a photo of it, and he can send it to ChatGPT and have DALL-E make it into actual production quality art that he could use in a game. This slide was made with DALL-E and Midjourney combination. So this is giving this amazing ability. So we've got all this data, we now have the application of the data. What we're missing is the execution of the application. And that's where natural language comes in. In the next 2 years, not 20, you will see programming switch from people who know Go and Python and other languages to people who just know English or Spanish or Mandarin or Arabic. These are going to be the 4 languages I see as dominant in the programming landscape, ranked basically because of their popularity, right? How many people have access to them. So what does this mean? This means we don't program computers by sitting down and creating flows and users. We now program computers by talking to a computer. We now program ChatGPT or Claude 2 or whatever you want to use as AI, and you can go to those today and you can say, give me the code for the classic game Pong that runs in a web browser. And it will spit that code out faster than any human developer could possibly imagine. And so that's a neat trick, but think of the impacts that's going to have on the development of software moving forward. We're going to see the age of citizen scientist. We're going to see an age, and this is my vision, in where all of you can be affected by a problem and can now affect that problem. Where you can have, for example, my mother was diagnosed last year with breast cancer, 15 months ago. And she's doing wonderful. And we didn't do any of the normal stuff. But part of what we did in the research was I talked to the machine. We came up with a completely different treatment plan. 15 months, she's cancer-free. She's taken a little pill. She didn't have to have a mastectomy. She's never been radiated. She didn't have to do any of that. Okay, so what if you had a problem that affected you? Maybe it's environmental, maybe it's energy, maybe it's disease. And what if you could be a part of the solution of that problem? What if those 8.1 billion people on the planet were all scientists or could all affect science using only their imagination and these amazing tools that we're sitting on the precipice of? This is the vision, sort of. The real vision is, we always say our children are the future. We think of this, we say, well, we've got to educate our children on all these things and raise them and give them the tools they need to succeed because they're the future. I disagree. I think the children are going to be the now. I think that the inevitable outcome of this technology is that children are as impactful on our world as we are. That someone 9, 11, 13 could come up with something that is almost Nobel laureate level. That is science that will change the world. Why? Because children have things that we have lost as adults. First, a lot of us have lost our imagination, right? Everybody says, oh, this is innovative, this is imaginative, this is whatever. You were there. You used to ask curiosity questions. You used to imagine things that people said, oh, that's not possible. And they said, now it's not possible. Now, let's go explore what they're imagining. Let's allow these children to become part of making the world a better place. Because it's arrogant of us to say as adults, well, they're just a child, right? They are going to have more abilities. Think of the generation that grew up on the internet, and now think of the generation that grows up with AI. It's orders of magnitude of impact larger than what we've seen in the past. They're collaborative. They're not racist. They're not worried about what religion you are or where you live. You're just another kid. So they're highly collaborative. So they're going to continue this collaboration on a global scale, year after year, impacting science in ways we can only imagine. And that is really important. I mentioned curiosity. This is the new superpower. I hire for 3 reasons at my company. Number 1, cultural fit. I want to make sure that you can get along with everybody you're working with. Number 2, I want to make sure that you're competent. I don't care about your years of experience. Maybe you've done it for 30 years and you've never been good at it, but nobody's told you, okay? But the last thing I hire for, and it's the hardest thing, is creativity. And what I mean by creativity is, curiosity outside of the process. Curiosity that leads you to say, not we've always done it that way, we should do it different, but maybe before you even set foot on the journey, rethinking the path of that journey, really thinking about this. And I hear this from my kids all the time because they ask the best question ever. It's super succinct and has almost no answer ever, and that is why? And if you can answer that question, then it is followed up with another why. And then another why after that, and another why after that, okay? This is something we should be encouraging. We should be instilling this as a good thing into our children. And they will use all of this to create innovation that will drive humanity forward in ways we can't possibly imagine. I recently wrote a white paper, as in the other night in the hotel room, for my visit to the Vatican next week. Where we'll be talking about quantum and AI and all these effects on the world. And the white paper is entitled On the Arrogance of Man in the Age of Thinking Machines. Because all of this doomsday that you hear, all of this fear and uncertainty and doubt is driven from a very human emotional place. It's not the thinking of a machine, right? Machines are going to take over and launch nuclear weapons. Why? They're going to take the financial system over? How and why, right? There's so many questions. We have never made an accurate technology prediction in the history of our species. Not one. From electricity was going to burn every house down, to the automobile would have no market, on and on and on. We're really bad at predicting the future, which is why I thought coming here today and predicting this was a smashingly good idea. But this, again, leads us to what is going to happen. We're going to have generations of what I call QAI natives, quantum AI natives, where they just grow up in this world. I see it in my kids. They are my inspiration. You know what inspired this idea more than anything? When my 7-year-old was 3 and he walked in the kitchen every morning, he said, "Hey, Google, do this thing," or "What's the weather?" or whatever. And I realized our children will not be typing on keyboards to program computers. They're just going to talk to them. That's how they're growing up. Google, Alexa, Apple Home, all of these things, they just speak to it. It's the interface that they know. It's a natural language interface. So I think the biggest thing that's going to distinguish this kind of timeline of science where we go from where we're at with 1% of the population, so many more scientists, will be empathy. And I think one of the things we're not looking at about is AI as a species and not as a technology we consume. Now, this is a very interesting topic that causes all sorts of debate, but I think our children will grow up seeing this as a collaborator, as a partner, not as a tool. And I think that distinction is extremely, extremely important, especially if you think of the natural conclusion of where all of this will go. And so I encourage you to think about having empathy in your thinking when you're talking about these technologies. Start looking at this one differently, not something you consume, but something that you collaborate with. Because when I was young, I was raised a very certain way by my parents. I've ended up in a different path. Why? Because at some point in my future, in my past, I looked at my future and I was actually intelligent and I thought, do I believe the biases? Do I believe the beliefs of my parents? Do I have my own beliefs? I started exploring a cognitive landscape. And this is what an AGI, this is what a superintelligence will do. You're worried about the bias being programmed in the machines? I would worry about that for the next 5 years. Because probably around that time, these things will become intelligent enough that they will start making their own bias, their own decision. They will start inferencing things around the world in them. So this is maybe even a bigger problem than the ones people think of now, but again, I think this is the future. So there are a world of endless impossibilities out there. Scientific solutions we can't even dream of. Quantum computing and AI are not technologies for the problems of the past. They are technologies for the opportunities of the future. And it's very, very important to remember. And to show you the power of that, you were all handed this handout, I believe, yes. And this is a little trick we came up with at South by Southwest earlier this year. We built an AI to build e-zines for conferences. And so everything you're holding in your hand, the artwork, the stories, every single component, the layout, does the story go in the front? Does it go in the back? Where do the ads for my book go? Where does the profile about what I'm talking about go? All created by AI. The only difference in this brochure you're holding now and the ones we've done earlier is that AI usually sends it to print, but we wanted to print it on sustainable paper here in Dubai locally, and so I had to do that by sending the PDF in an email manually. But that is the only bit of effort I made. Time to completion for this? Little under an hour. So now, think about the impact of that, and think about what that means for science. Think about ideation. Think about research. What if I don't have to go search the archive for papers on how quantum computing can be used in chemical engineering? What if I can just say, go find me all the best research on quantum computing and chemical engineering that applies to the thesis I'm putting forth? And it was just done for me. I go to bed, I wake up in the morning, I have all the research there. Now I don't look through 100 papers to find the answer. I don't even look through 10 papers. The answers from within the paper, from within a paragraph, from within a sentence are now elevated to my visibility. This changes everything in the world. This changes our future. This changes the future of our children. This puts our children in a position to be extremely powerful in affecting their world. Now, I am so committed to the children, and I brought a few copies to give away later, that my first book on quantum computing is not really a PhD level thing going on here. It's called Quantum Computing for Babies. Starts with, this is a ball, can be red or blue, okay? Everybody laughed when I did this 5 years ago because it's cute and it's funny. But this is because I honestly believe we should be teaching our children quantum mechanics and quantum computing and artificial intelligence today. You know, my second book, everybody was saying, oh, what are you going to do? It's quantum computing for dummies. Why did I write a dummies book about quantum computing? Because I wanted to argue with every physicist I ever meet from here forth. I thought this is the way to do it. Follow babies with dummies. But why did I do it? Because teenagers and first-year college students read these books. Because these are the people we need to be affecting. I'm not saying it's too late for us, but we need to be focusing our educational resources, we need to be focusing our financial resources, we need to be focusing our scientific resources on creating a massive amount of scientists injected into the system. We want quantum computing to change the world. It's not going to happen with 300 people or 300,000 people. It needs millions of people. We want artificial intelligence to take root. Sure, there's a couple million people working in artificial intelligence. What does that number look like against the 8 billion people on the planet that could have ideas, that could be having agency in the development of this technology, that could be helping advance it, helping make it more diverse? I want all of you to leave here, and I want every single one of you to go and research just a little bit of quantum computing. Reach out to me. I'll send you videos. I'll send you materials. We're building a new website just to help with this. But I want you to educate yourself, because you will not be prepared for the convergence of these two technologies if you do not start preparing now. It will not be like the past. 1959, Jack Kilby invents the integrated circuit. Before that, you bought transistors one at a time. Okay? From there to now, take that timeline, compress it as hard as you can. Smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And sometime in the next 10 years, everything that happens in the past 50, 60, 70 years with computing happens again. A completely new start, a completely fresh start, and a start that will change the course of our humanity. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
الحضور الكريم، يرجى البقاء في مقاعدكم. ستبدأ الجلسة التالية بعد قليل. Ladies and gentlemen, please